Okay folks, something a little bit different from me, from Lofoten, from previous visits that I've videoed here. We're going to go up to a waterfall, which is particularly picturesque. I'm not a huge lover of shooting waterfalls, to be honest, but this one I'm going to take you up to here is pretty epic as waterfalls go. It's one that I've wanted to photograph, I've wanted to video on the channel before, but it requires a specific set of conditions, because the amount of snow that they get here in Lofoten, this waterfall's often covered up. So you need to get it in that transition period between having snow on the mountains, but obviously snow melt so you can see the river, which we've got today. It's just up there behind me. It's a fairly short walk from the roadside, just a bit of a quick yomp up the hill. Although what I should say is, if you're visiting this place, I'd highly recommend putting crampons on, because even though we're in this period where it's warming up now and things are melting, there's still a lot of ice, and often this can be the period where it's actually quite tricky to get across. So I'm going to get cracking, and let's see what we can come up with. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me all right. I know I keep saying this in these videos, but there's a lot of water coming down here and it's quite loud to my ear. It's probably absolutely fine. This first shot, this waterfall has changed massively even since yesterday when I had the group up here. There's a lot more water coming down here, and there's a lot more room to move around. A lot of the ice on the banks has melted, so there's probably a lot more scope for interesting compositions here today. This first one, you can see here how close I'm having to get to the flow of the river here to really give it some impact. That peak at the top, I am all the way out at 15mm on a full frame to give you a good idea of this. Firstly, the scale of this peak, but obviously how wide I have to be to get the whole thing in the shot. Now, this isn't an approach that I particularly like doing an awful lot, but to get this waterfall in and the peak in vertical, it has to be that wide. So I'm going for a very simple shot here, really impactful foreground, about 1/8 of a second. I'm not going too slow here because the water's moving quite fast, and I've got the polarizer on. Very simple, with the peak in the background. Let's see how it turns out. All right, so we've finished with that composition. Hopefully the sound is all right now. I don't want to keep labouring the point about the sound, but it's easier to get quite paranoid when you're shooting waterfalls and when there's a lot of noise around, because, you know, I'm sure you'll agree if you watch these YouTube videos that the minute you see bad audio on a video, it's kind of game over, really. You can live with a little bit of, you know, video footage being slightly out of focus or underexposed or whatnot, but the minute there's bad audio, it really kills it. So hopefully that bit's come out all right. It should be anyway. I've just made my way up to the second part of these falls. Now, as I said earlier, I was here with the group yesterday, and again, as I was saying earlier, it has changed massively. A couple of the compositions that I was looking at yesterday, there's an awful lot less snow and ice. Now, not a great thing in some respects, because, you know, as you can see here, you can see a lot of the browny grasses coming through the snow, which can look a little bit untidy in certain shots. Not all of them, but some of them. But what it does mean, which is a good thing, is there's a lot more flow in the river, and there's a lot more scope to get in close and find some more interesting patterns than there was yesterday. Very much a whiteout in the last couple of days up here, but this turbo thaw that's been going on, it's about 7 degrees today, which for Lofoten is really mild, but it is opening up some interesting options up here. So let's go and see what we can do. Okay, so this shot behind me, very simple shot. Now I really need the 14mm on this shot to get the peak in. It's very, very wide angle, but I think it looks pretty good in the camera. Now, I've been playing around with the height of the tripod here, getting quite low. What I felt when I was doing that, though, was the mid-ground was getting cut off a bit too much, and it was losing the kind of balance in the shot. I've just raised the tripod up a little bit just to get a little bit more balance in the midground there. I think it works a bit better. But in terms of the shutter speed, I'm about 1/8 of a second. I've got the polarizer on, which is helping give me a little bit more contrast in the foreground and helping the white of the water stand out. But with these sort of shots, they don't need to be overly complicated. You've got a nice pointy peak there in the background and you've got a lovely flow in the river. It doesn't need to be any more complex than that. So here it is on the screen. Let me know what you think. Okay, so this final shot behind me now, this is one that I took last year in much different conditions. It was a lot more moody and there wasn't an awful lot of interest in the sky. So I actually took a landscape version of this last year. I'll pop it on the screen here so you can see it. And I really like that version, but today we've got much brighter conditions, much more kind of Arctic conditions, I guess. We've got nice wispy clouds in the sky with a little bit of blue. So what I'm going for is another vertical frame, just to get more of that top part of the frame in the shot. Now, as I speak, there's a little bit of light creeping out around Flagstad Pollen here. This area, if you come to it, it's a big bowl and it doesn't get an awful lot of light in the winter. So if you can grab a shot with the peak with a little bit of light on it, then that's a bit of a bonus. What I'm doing here is taking a polarized shot for the sky so I can get a little bit more texture in the clouds. And then I'm also taking a second shot polarized for the foreground, same as before, to give me a little bit of contrast with those dark reddy rocks against the white of the water. 14mm again, which I've never shot 14mm so much in my life, to be honest. When I'm back home, I rarely shoot anything wider than about 18mm, even up on the mountains. Whereas here, if you come in here for the first time, be prepared to shoot the wide end of your wide angle lens, because you do have to get really close to your foregrounds, a bit like I was saying in that last video at Egham. And this one here, because you're so close to the foreground, you need that extra width to get the top of the peak in. I had a couple of guests here this week that were really struggling, even at 16, 17mm, to get the tops of the peaks in the shot. So anyway, a little bit of advice for you. So I'm going to grab this and then I'm going to make my way down and think of somewhere else to shoot. So here's this image on the screen. Let me know what you think. Okay, so not a bad little shoot that in the end. It's just a nice location to shoot this one. It's pretty stress-free and you can get some great images out of it. Certainly great looking images anyway. I don't know if they're going to win any awards, but yeah, you've just got to be also a little bit careful coming up here sometimes in the ice. It's not too bad today when there's a bit of a thaw going on, but if you're coming up here in full winter conditions, even though it's just a relatively short yomp up the hill, I'd strongly advise putting crampons on. But yeah, it's been a nice little shoot this. I don't know if this is going to be the last video I make from Lofoten this year. I've got another workshop starting in a couple of days, and truth be told, I'd like to just go and do a bit of photography without having to video it. As much as it's a joy making these videos, it is nice to just put the video camera down when you're doing this sort of stuff. And also the type of videos I make, because they're very photography centered, and I try where I can to cut out a lot of the unnecessary B-roll and stuff. It does make it quite tricky to actually fill a sort of 10 to 15 minute video if it's just me relentlessly talking to the camera about photography. I mean, let me know in the comments. I don't know, do you want to see more filler fluff in the middle of these videos or not? It's certainly not my cup of tea, to be honest, but it does make padding these videos out a little bit tricky. But anyway, just before I go, just a quick mention. I will be putting this out to my mailing list shortly. I do have dates for next year's Lofoten workshop. I'll be putting a second date on when I get that confirmed with my accommodation provider. But for more information on that, I'll put a link in the description, and I'll put something at the bottom of the screen here if you're interested in coming to Lofoten for a workshop in 2027. 2 of the spaces have already gone through, you know, DMs and whatnot to me, but anyway, yeah, it's there if you're interested. Right, I'm going to get going, and I'll see you on the next one.